Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vox Podcast, soon to be renamed something, with a color palette consisting of various colors and a new website. So all of this, yes, it will come. Package. We're now getting reviews, commenting on the color palette that there's skepticism, and I understand that. I understand that. I want to thank a couple of people for joining our Patreon team this last week. Peter, Mark, and Adam. Those are not three people. Peter, Mark is one person, and Adam is a second person. I want to say thank you for joining our Patreon team. It's a big deal for us. And we decided early on that we wanted to not do adverts, as they say, but more of an NPR kind of thing. And so we're super grateful that people consistently sign up and join us in the endeavor for producing this and then, seeing where it goes. So we're 5 years and maybe 6 months into this whole thing, and it's taken on a life that I don't think we could have ever imagined. Tim, I literally 6 minutes ago, I just finished WandaVision. And so I
haven't watched it yet, so don't say anything.
I'm a bit of a mess.
Oh.
Well, if you haven't watched it, I thought you would have watched it. So I had this whole thing I wanted to tell you about, but now I can't say a word. I cannot say a word.
I'm going to watch it right after this.
I had a good riff on it. And I thought for sure you would have gotten up early to watch it.
Nope, I got up early and took the kids to school, and then I read a bunch of articles.
Okay, I really want you to think about your life choices this morning, and just because I have a thing, I have a take, a hot take on a cultural moment. Ooh. Yeah, and now it's empty. All right.
Uh-oh.
Well, speaking of hot takes on cultural moments, Timothy.
It's a good segue.
You've got a bee up your bonnet.
What?
Evidently, there are some ding-dongs claiming the name of Jesus out there in the world.
Ooh.
And you're a bit unsure of their motivations. You want to comment on the things?
Times.
Tim's troubled times, ladies and gentlemen.
Tim's troubled times.
Let's hear it. Tell us what's on Tim's troubled heart.
No, it was a busy week in the Christian evangelical American market. We had the CPAC. What was that? The Conservative Political
Think Tank
Action Committee or Conference?
Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Something.
It's the yearly confab of conservatives, and the big question was, okay, how's Trump going to be positioned in this thing?
Right. That was the big. That was supposed to be the big revelation. Was if the Republican Party was going to decisively say, "Hey, we are no longer subscribing to the chaos of the last 4 years. We're going to try to get back to where we were," or what we found was that they are embracing that ding dong.
Wow. No. Tim here is speaking. Tim here is speaking. We have listeners who are fans of President Trump. We have listeners who are Republicans.
What?
And who are not fans of President Trump, but are fans of Republican policies. We have also all sorts of listeners. So Tim here is exercising his right of ding dong to nominate El Presidente for that name. So not only was there, it seemed, did you watch it? Did you text me that you watched it?
I watched afterwards. I watched a bunch of the speeches or clips and whatnot.
Okay. All right. And give us the overall vibe, Timothy.
Well, I think the best example of the overall vibe was that there was like a literal golden calf.
Yeah, you mean his calf
into
muscles?
The hallowed halls.
His calf muscles, because he was in flip-flops?
Yeah, he was wearing...
It was a gold statue.
A gold statue of Trump The irony of the whole thing is just too thick.
Oh,
And I think I read that the statue itself was even imported from Mexico. So it's like,
oh,
layers
perfect. So
upon
Mexico
layers of irony.
paid for it, perhaps.
yeah, so maybe.
No, I don't know. Maybe that's
Maybe
not
it's
true.
all been tied together.
So, yeah, there was no shortage of memes from the moment they were wheeling this sucker down, this gold-plated President Trump. And so even if you're a fan, come on, man, you gotta admit that's just so crazy. Could you imagine what Fox News would have done with somebody done that with Obama? I mean, give me a
Golden
break.
Obama.
Oh, yeah, Gold
I mean, they lost their minds when Obama wore his,
it'd be Gold Obama.
When he wore his tan suit.
That was as close to
News
gold
lost
as he
its
got.
mind.
And then did they not? I'd read somewhere, but Tim, you would know better. Had they done a survey of the CPAC audience to determine what were the most important issues for voting?
Yes,
And
they did.
And shockingly,
Well, Mike, what do you think was number one? So they polled the CPAC audience to say, hey, conservative Republican voters, what are the most important issues to you in 2021?
Well, if the trend of 2016 continued, where there was great lip service to pro-life, but pro-life was like 8th or ninth on the list, I'm going to say something like immigration or Second Amendment was number one, or economy.
Immigration was number 3.
Okay.
Economy was number 4.
Nice.
Number 1 was election integrity.
Oh,
by a large
yes.
margin.
Okay. All right.
And that was a lot of what the conversations and speeches were about. Still the stolen election.
You're right.
And cancel culture. Cancel culture was a big topic.
Oh, we're going to get to that. We're going to get that
What?
Because I own 2 Dr. Seuss books that are of ill repute.
It's collector's items now.
And I got rid of my potato head just in protest.
There you go. No more Mister. So, sanctity of life, dignity, pro-life came in last place.
Which, I mean, it's just so, my conservative friends, blessings upon your house. And for those, I am a sanctity of life person from the womb to the tomb, baby. But that internal contradiction is astounding to me. Absolutely astounding. We'll fight to the death on the pro-life hill, but actually what matters most is advancing our political agenda and money. And it's just so funny. And then, Timothy, did you have more you wanted to say about that?
No, nope. It was just, you kind of I want the Republican Party to succeed. I think it's important to have two parties, to have it's like the free market. It works better if there's competition in business. You know what I mean? Like we work better when we're having a conversation rather than just.
But like we've said, Tim, there are certain elements of both parties that are utterly the same. We've talked about this in the Sermon on the Mount series, right? It's just two sides of the same political philosophy about the relationship between government and its citizens and individual liberties and where you draw those lines. So in one sense, okay, there's a bothness to them that is inescapable. In another sense, they are radically different views of how to treat people who are other. I mean, where do our best interests lie, with ourselves or the other? So, man, it's, I think I've been secretly hoping for years, since Ross Perot, dated reference, ran as a third-party candidate, that they would actually be
Dana Carvey?
Dana Carvey played him on SNL, that there would be some, release of the stranglehold of the two-party system. And perhaps this might achieve it, because the official Republican Party doesn't give any indication of wanting to learn from, exercise humility over, or learn graciousness towards what happened the last 4 years at all. And instead, we're now just doing the same, the same dance in a different direction. Well, speaking of Tim and articles and cancel culture, I loved the article that you sent this week about the front man from Striper. And yeah, for those of you who are of a certain age, Striper was my permitted heavy rock listen in the catalog of Christian bands you were allowed to listen to. But they were even sketchy because they wore yellow and black, and they rocked, and they sang songs like "To Hell with the Devil."
Yeah, they were edgy edgy even for the Christian kids.
Yeah, so Striper, awesome. Actually, there were a couple of songs I really liked. I mean, they were like they kicked. It taught me about rock and roll before, because I was in my Duran Duran phase, and then all of a sudden they were blistering. But all that is to say, the front man, Michael Sweet, I believe is his name, is worried that the Bible's going to be canceled. They one of the hallmarks of their concerts, they throw Bibles at people.
Yeah.
How they say it is they toss Bibles into the crowd. What probably happens is that the Bibles are just landing on unsuspecting citizens. But anyway, so because of that, he is worried.
That's quite an image.
He is worried about the Bible being canceled. I just saw the headline, and I chuckled to myself, and I said, "Self, it seems so paradoxical that whenever the church gets made the state religion, it dies. But wherever the church is officially disavowed by the state, it flourishes."
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, if that's our greatest fear, that people will all of a sudden find our Bible offensive and insist that we not read it, I couldn't think of a better thing that could happen. Because literally the way you kill the church is wed it with the state. And the way you make the church flourish is to make the state opposed to the church. And obviously, I'm not a fan of what happens to persecuted people, the imprisonments, the beatings, the deaths, the martyrdoms. I mean, all of that is horrific. But if you're looking at the health of the church, it's just interesting to me that the Bible, people have been trying to cancel the Bible for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it only makes it spread. And so that's where I'm like, and this whole idea of cancel culture, I find so funny because, first of all, Tim, you know this. Christians invented this. Christians, along with the moral majority, we invented a culture war over the fabric of this country. One of the tools in our culture war arsenal is the boycott and the protest. And so, I was told to boycott Disney early on, Procter and Gamble, because they had some sort of imagery on their something. I was told to boycott Target recently. I was told to boycott. It's like this long list of big companies, or like, when somebody leaves the faith, like Amy Grant with secular, and so she was. I mean, come on. So this is a weapon of the church being wielded by culture against it, and we're complaining.
Yeah.
The church is the one that framed the relationship between the church and the state as one of culture war. That our job was to take these centers of gravity and influence and to turn them Christian, so that downstream from things like education and entertainment and medicine, people would be sort of indoctrinated into Christianity, even culturally. Like, there's this battle we got to fight for the soul of our nation. And you sent me an article about something like this, correct?
Oh yeah, did you read this? This was David French. What was the date on this? February 28th. So this is really recent. So he wrote an article on The title of the article is How a Rising Religious Movement Rationalizes the Christian Grasp for Power. And then the subtitle is On the Dangers of the Seven Mountain Mandate.
Ooh.
And I kept seeing that Seven Mountain thing. I don't know if most people, is it that widely? Well, even he says in the beginning of the article, like, you may not be familiar with the name, but you're familiar with the effects.
Yeah. Yeah, so the origin of the mandate, he says, rests with an alleged divine revelation shared by Bill Bright, who founded Campus Crusade or Cru, Lauren Cunningham, founder of Youth with a Mission or YWAM, and Francis Schaeffer, who was a big deal when I was in college as kind of like a radical apologist and philosopher. Yeah. And there, I'm just literally reading from the article. There are 7 key cultural and religious institutions that should be influenced and transformed by Christian believers to create godly change in America. Yeah. The key to transforming the nation rests with the family, the church, education, media, arts, the economy, and the government with the truth of the gospel.
So everything. Yeah, it's interesting. They set up, the idea is like, so those 3 guys all thought that they all claim that they had a divine revelation independently, that God was telling them that these are 7 mountains that need to be kind of overtaken. Yeah. From the world, and that there needs to be Christian kings that sit upon each of these mountains. And so it's really interesting because it breaks all the way down to like Paula White and then the Jeremiah Johnson guy that predicted Trump's win in 2015 and then prophesied. They all call it prophecy. It's all prophecy. It's not educated guesses or hypotheses. It's prophecy.
Of course it is.
He prophesied that Trump would win again in 2020, and when he didn't, he had to apologize and said he was wrong, and then he got death threats and like all this crazy stuff from people who were so mad that this didn't work out that way. But I mean, everything that you're saying about the culture war and everything, they're like, we've seen it, right? We've seen this over the last 4 years for sure. Like we're grabbing at power.
This was the rise of the religious right. This was what pro-life rhetoric was mobilized to accomplish. We have to take over the courts. We have to take over school boards. We have to create Christian industries in art and media that are more safe. And I mean, obviously, there's a baseline of truth that's like, hey, there are culture, like not all of culture is to be received uncritically, and some of it's to be rejected outright. Some of it is antichrist. But what seems so obvious in hindsight is that the very framing of the relationship between the church and the world in those terms is completely antithetical to the New Testament, to the practice and witness of Jesus, to the preaching of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, and to the practice of Paul, where he just calls churches to fidelity. He doesn't call them to influence culture. He calls them to fidelity to their witness, and that is how they influence culture. And I cannot tell you, Timothy John, the irreparable harm done in the name of taking the culture back for Christ. I repudiate all formal involvement of anything that smacked of that. Totally. It is so not of Jesus, even remotely. And that doesn't mean, of course, that we just sit idly by and that culture's gonna do what it's gonna do. No. Well, it does require thoughtful engagement, no question about this. We're invited in our political system to be active. Hallelujah for that. But we come to it as ambassadors of another kingdom entirely, one that resists all of the influences of the Seven Mountain thing, right?
Can I read the last little section that he wrote?
Sure.
Is that okay? Because he's saying what you're saying.
Oh, nice.
Because he was talking about how Trump was a mountain king. And we lost that seat and a really powerful power. So this is French's words now. What is the alternative to the pursuit of power? I prefer the wisdom of Martin Luther King Jr., quote, The church must be reminded that it is not the master or the servant of the state, but rather the conscience of the state. It must be the guide and the critic of the state and never its tool, end quote. Christians can never forget that they live in what my pastor once called an upside-down kingdom. The last shall be first. If you want to save your life, you'll lose it. But if you lose your life for Christ, you'll save it. And don't forget, the Son of God himself spent his entire life on earth far from the mountaintop. He was born in a manger, distant from the centers of power. He was the friend of sinners. He was persecuted and punished by a mountain king named Pilate and executed next to a thief. When he rose, he appeared not to Caesar, but to a small band of ordinary men and women who would become martyrs, not rulers.
Peasants.
Christ prevailed. This last part's really good. Christ prevailed, as my friend and seminary professor Curtis Chang told me, not by fighting from the commanding power of the heights, but by fighting from utterly different terrain. When Scripture calls Christians to take up your cross and follow me, listen to this. It's declaring in Curtis's words that our mountain is Golgotha, the dusty Israeli hill where Christ was crucified.
Oh,
that's our King's mountaintop.
And even then,
that's a powerful. I mean, in this conversation, what a powerful image that is.
That's an incredible image. But even then, I don't like French's words of the word fight. We're not fighting.
Right.
Flesh and blood is not our freaking enemy.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, It's not like we're engaging from a different position and we're fighting. No. And I know that's not what he's saying, but I even balk at that word.
No, I mean, it's a poorly chosen word in light of the point in the thread. Everything we've done with the Sermon on the Mount, like the whole last section, the whole, the rest is commentary. It's just...
How did we and I want to use the real word.
Then you should just use it.
How did we effing miss this?
I don't know, man.
The distinguishing mark of the kingdom of God is self-sacrificial enemy love. Jesus, when confronted with Pilate's power, I mean, this is so instructive. Right? Pilate's like, don't you know who I am? Jesus is like, dude, you wouldn't have any position except what my Father gives you. Yeah. Do you not think I can call down 72 freaking thousand angels right now? No. This has to happen. I mean, he so redefines power. And so guys like Greg Boyd have been Shane Claiborne have been so instrumental. A guy named Donald Craybill, who wrote a book called The Upside Down Kingdom. They've been so instrumental in saying, no, we're not. MLK, dude, but I don't even know if we're the conscience of the state. Like, I don't even like that language. Yeah. We are a counter state. We are a counter narrative. We are what it looks like when God's will is done on earth as it is in heaven. And it's completely upside down. It's to be an embodied indictment of the way the world runs. So yes, in our political system, and this is why Christian nationalism is so attractive, in our system, we get a voice. And so it's very easy to say, oh yeah, that voice is prophetic, and that's us crying out in the wilderness and to Christianize the whole thing. But what Jesus is inviting to in the imagination of Paul, and I use that language straight from Gombas, right, isn't a revitalized state. That's not the goal of freaking Jesus following. The goal of Jesus following is a revitalized church.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no effing mandate ever to reform the state. I mean, how in the freaking world? And I'm a part, dadgummit. And I stand completely and utterly against it, and am now committing the rest of my life to oppose that entire way of looking at Jesus following and its relationship to the culture.
Yeah,
I am disgusted.
It was the whole Sermon on the Mount, and I think you said halfway through the Sermon on the Mount as Jesus was flipping all of that upside down.
Yeah.
What I don't remember what context you said it in, but we were talking and you said that, if Jesus was willing to do that then, why would he not be willing to do that now? Like, he tore down his father's structure. Why not now?
Oh, he is. He absolutely, utterly is. All of this stuff coming to light, all the corruption, all the shallowness. I mean, do you know why the Southern Baptist Convention is getting devoured by debates about CRT? It's right. What's CRT stand for?
Critical race theory.
Yes, thank you. It escaped my mind for a second. It's because the church has never done the hard work of repentance.
Yeah.
So God, I mean, literally, there are other systemic forces that are prophetic being raised up outside the church to call it to account.
Yeah.
Because it has lost its saltiness. In the words of Jesus, it is good for nothing except to be thrown away and trampled upon.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing what it looks like to be trampled upon, right? Just time after time, example after an example. And those are the ones that get the publicity. And I understand that there are millions of people who are building colonies of the kingdom all around us, right? I just think we have lost any sense of imagination about what we are doing in the world. It is this Seven Mountain thing, and God bless those men. And Crew has done great work, and Young Life YWAM has done good work, and Labrie from Schaefer. But we have to reckon with the carnage of that way of viewing Christianity and its relationship to the state is done also. And that we have now people who cannot simply tell the difference between the Republican vision of the world and the Christian vision of the world. Or it's becoming more and more evident, and I hate both sidesing this, but it is true. I think it's true. I'm seeing some of the same fundamentalisms on the so-called progressive side that don't reflect the Sermon on the Mount either. And so you're just sitting like, okay, I have progressive sensitivities about the other. I don't want to add to the marginalization and oppression of people. I do believe in institutional power structures and gender power structures that have come to exist in this fallen world and must be resisted and named and awoken to. Absolutely. But I can't go all the way on some things. And I look at my conservative friends and I'm sitting here going, how in the world can you justify backing this when it blatantly contradicts everything that Jesus lives and taught for the sake of what turns out to be the 10th or the last voted, priority on our list? And I just am like, I mean, that's why we talk about feeling, spiritually homeless. I don't fit in either one of those. You don't fit in either one of those. And so we just sit with Jesus, and you recognize the longer you sit in the sermon, that this way of framing how we are to approach the world is actually demonic. Like when we talk about being the conscience of the state, right? That can so easily turn into the language of the accuser. We're shaming people who aren't Christian for not being Christian. I think the way we are the conscience of the state is by embodying a prophetic counterculture, where when the state misses it, we actually, that was what they did to Rome. Rome didn't take care of its poor, the church did.
Yeah.
And Rome was pissed. You know what I mean? So to me, I read all of this and not one bit of me thinks, oh man, we really got our work cut out if we're gonna transform America. Damn it, I have enough to do trying to freaking walk with Jesus myself, let alone be a part of a community where we want to provide a fresh and alternative way of conceiving of the Christian life, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we all need to stop wanting so bad to be defined by somebody else or defined by something else, or taking on a name or having to fit into a particular structure of something, and then test all of those spirits. I don't remember if we were talking off mic or not, but the Dr. Seuss stuff, that was the Dr. Seuss family that was pulling, it was the foundation that was pulling those books, not Joe Biden, not progressive culture. There was no influence there. They just found some books that would be troubling for kids of color to read, and so they decided not to publish those 6 out of hundreds. Yeah. But testing the spirits when Facebook is telling you that was cancel culture or that was a progressive movement, dig for 2 minutes and find out that that's not what it is, and don't be defined by other people.
Well, I mean, I just think about if in the 1940s kids with Down syndrome were called like mongoloids and and retards, and and totally
that was accepted language of the time.
Yeah, I wouldn't sit in judgment. And now we know better.
Yes.
And so I really don't think re-examining the cultural artifacts from previous eras and recognizing that some of those and sitting in the tension of the recognition that this is part of history. Like these things really happened and they really hurt people. And also recognizing, yes, that we don't want to perpetuate it.
Yeah.
And so you do this dance. But yeah, the idea that the canceling is an artifact of a Christian culture war that should never have been fought.
Yeah.
We do not have to announce boycotts. We simply are in the world. And if there is something that we find a bit sketchy or harmful to the world, we create a thriving counterculture that promotes the good.
Our mountain is Golgotha.
Oh, dude,
I really like that.
That's a great, dude. We should spend some time on that. Let's think about that more, because that's maybe that's
what's nice too is that it's also kind of metal, so it really lends some credence to Stryper. Because isn't Golgotha like the place of the skull or something like that?
Yes, yes. Our mountain is Golgotha.
Oh, I'm gonna try to put some music behind what you just did.
Please give it some auto-tune before you do anything else. Oh, good Lord, you got me all fired up, Timothy.
Sorry. There's always so much happening in the world.
Damn,
but man, as we're doing the Sermon on the Mount, I just can't the rest is commentary. I can't get that out of my head, and I can't get this love your neighbor, and all of these culture wars are not that.
I can't tell you, Tim, how transforming this has been for me.
Oh, me too.
I literally just sit and go, well, maybe we should do it again. Because, I mean, the rest is commentary, right? I mean, that's a vision for your whole life there.
It's a real Dr. Seuss vision, actually, standing on one foot. It seems like a Dr. Seuss book all on its own.
Yes. I will become a convert if you describe the Torah while I stand on one foot. Okay. All right. What you hate, do not do to your neighbor. Okay. Right? Or in Jesus' words, love your neighbor as yourself. Bam. Yeah, it's so good. Man, this stuff makes me so happy and makes me so infuriated. So let's do a little Sermon on the Mount, Timothy John. Now that you got the blood flowing, my mind racing. We have one of the apostles today reading from the book of Matthew. We have a guy named John. So he emailed us, and he signed his email, I am the disciple who Jesus loves.
There you go.
And so we found out his name was John and was offering to read this. And so who knows? Maybe stranger things have happened.
Maybe.
So the voice of an angel, John, is going to read our text today from Matthew 7.
Hi, this is John Vinolas. I'm reading Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 to 23. Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow, and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? So every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, you will recognize them by their fruits. Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day many will say to me, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and do many mighty works in your name?' And then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness.'"
Thank you, John. And we may go a little even longer than that, because Jesus here, shockingly, is just doing such genius stuff, and it's very, very relevant to our world right now. So let's take each of these sections sort of individually, and they build on each other. So enter through the narrow gate, and narrow is interesting. So obvious, I've been to Israel, I've been to Jerusalem, and there are a whole bunch of different ways to get in the city.
I've never been there. Can we do a Vox field trip?
Dude.
We should do a Vox trip like that where we podcast while we're there, like in the different section, like different places.
That's genius. That's genius. The problem is it's expensive.
Yeah.
But
that's why I've never been.
yeah, exactly. So I was there, and there are these big gates. Obviously, the East Gate is one of those that are meant for large groups. And then there are these other gates, that are like a little more hidden, a little more difficult to navigate. And that was true of most ancient cities, right? You'd have the gates that would kind of lead to the center of town, and then you would have other sorts of gates. And the image here is that you have to find one that's harder to get into. Not harder in the sense of more physically demanding, but it's not the natural flow. The natural flow is going to take you to the big gates, right? This one you have to want to find. That's the image. And the word narrow here it has the connotation of like suffering or trouble. Like it's narrow, not in contrast to wide, but the narrowing is because they're suffering here. And it requires intentionality. You have to want to get in this way. This isn't how the main roads are going to take you. So he says, enter through the narrow gate. Wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. So a couple of thoughts. It's not just any entrance. Contra to our progressive sympathies about, dude, just come however and whenever and whoever and whatever. Like the Jesus, the gate is narrow not because it demands doctrinal purity. It's narrow because it's Jesus shaped. Like what Jesus is doing here is so blasphemous. He is making his allegiance to his teaching the entrance to life. And again, to a Jewish audience, they're not missing what he's saying. Right? Moses did this too, but he had Yahweh's stamp right on the mountain. Right. But it was choose life or choose death. That was the book of Deuteronomy. Jesus is riffing here on Deuteronomy. And he's using a very common image. The road is narrow, which means it's harder. Like there's suffering here. There's persecution here. Secondly, it's narrow because it's Jesus shaped. So it's not just Mike Erie's personal religious belief shaped. It's Jesus shaped. Wide and narrow have to do with the difficulty and the ease. So wide, the word there also connotes ease of travel, right? It's the flatter. And there's a sense in which both of these choices are being made all the time. So Jesus paints this picture of the kingdom, and he says, listen, the normal gravity of human history isn't going this direction, right? If human history, man, there's so much good and culture building that comes and so much that's evil and horrible. But the normal gravity well of human history will always see success and power and in things in anti-kingdom ways. Purpose and meaning, all of that in anti-kingdom ways. And so you have to want to deviate from that path. So it's a harsh word, but it gets harsher because he's now going to say, and the narrow gate isn't doctrinal purity. And my goodness, we're going to get into this. But the narrow gate is obedience to his words, not the words of Torah, to his words. Bruh, as my son would say, bruh. Good Lord. And then he says, now he begins to talk of the leaders of the broad road. Okay? So he's not switching images. See, I used to think he's talking about he's giving 4 separate images. No, I think he's talking about the same image. So now he's going to say, watch out for false prophets. These are the prophets that beckon you to the broad road. They come to you in sheep's clothing, right? The image is that they're innocent, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. The image is that they want to harm you. By their fruit, you will recognize them. And fruit here for Jesus means the inner qualities. So Paul, uses the idea of the fruit of the Spirit, right? When the Spirit is at work in somebody, it shows itself in character. And that character will obviously show itself in action. Well, it's also true if the Spirit isn't at work in somebody. That will show itself in character, and that character will show itself in action. So by their fruit you will recognize the true prophets from the false ones. And then he just gives this really common sense analogy. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes? Or figs from thistles? The idea is you don't pick good fruit from rotten bushes.
Yeah.
Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but every bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. Now, the natural question here is, well, what does he mean by fruit? Right? So he says, just be on guard against the broad, really easy path. That's the gravity of human history, right? We'll take you down the path of violence, down the path of oppression, down the path of injustice, the path of idolatry, the path of just follow your own desire, right? But the Jesus-shaped path, you got to want that one.
Yeah.
And it involves a kind of suffering that's different from the broad one. But there will be people dressed in my name who will beckon you to the broad one.
Good Lord.
And they'll just disguise it. But inwardly, right, they are as awful as anyone else on the road. And the way you'll know is by their actions. There will always be a difference between their insides and their outsides. And so he uses an agricultural example. Of course, if I take a pear tree and tie apples to it, does that make it an apple tree?
No.
No, it does not, Timothy. It's still a pear tree, right? So tying good deeds on a bad tree doesn't make it a good tree.
Yeah.
All right. Then, now he's still talking about the same people. He's not switching topics. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, and so when Jesus uses the phrase that day, he's talking about the Old Testament day of the Lord, when Israel was going to be called to account. Jesus broadens this to include the Gentile nations, the idea that the whole world, it's called the day of the Lord, the whole world will be full of light and fire, and everything will be laid bare. What's real will be what's left. Right? We talked about this when we talked about hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Right? So he says, on that day, many will say to me, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Now, dude, this is one of the scariest, most sobering passages for me as somebody who wants to help lead the church.
Right.
Right? Because, I want to sit and I want to think about, true lie. And I think about all the false prophets out there, but the text is beckoning me first inward.
As it does.
As it should anyway. And notice what he says about the fruit. All right. The fruit is not spiritual gifts. Because these people are doing miracles and they're casting out demons.
Yeah.
The fruit is not a successful ministry because these people are casting out demons, performing miracles.
Right.
The fruit is not religious confession because they call him Lord, Lord to emphasize. The fruit is not spectacular displays of spiritual power. The fruit is not religious activity. The fruit is not rhetorical skill. Right? I mean, think about that list. 3 times these people boast before Jesus, in your name I did this, in your name I did this, and in your name I did this. 3 times they say they acted in his name. And his response is a repudiation formula in the ancient world. I never knew you. You were never truly my disciple. Good Lord. Now, there was a fellow back in the day by the name of Mark Driscoll who I took a particular dislike to after I saw some of the ways that he treated people publicly in interviews, but also I just saw some things privately. And he had gone on an interview and was being interviewed by a British podcast host whose wife was a pastor. And once our brother Driscoll found this out, he began to ask about, well, how big his church was if a woman's leading it. And because for him, like, only dudes can do that. Very, very demeaning, very insulting. And so I, because it was a public and it was making the rounds on the interwebs, I commented on it and just simply said, to me, this is totally unacceptable, no matter what you feel about the issue. And I was instantly flooded by messages from people I greatly respected saying, dude, do you know how many hundreds of people this guy's led to Jesus? Do you know how many thousands, how many churches he's planted? And it was all about big, spectacular, awesome. And I remember I replied, I'm not judging the fruit of his ministry, I'm judging the fruit of his spirit. Now, whether it was my place to have said something or not, let's set that aside. And whether or not I was right, let's set that aside. What I found to be interesting was the immediate appeal to results as the justification for whatever nonsense he was involved in.
Yeah.
And you see Jesus calling that utterly into account. So here's the picture. There's a Jesus-shaped way into the kingdom, but there are many people who are going to try to lead you in the easy route, the route that doesn't cost you to deny yourself, the route that's easy, right? The route that's comfortable. And the way you're going to recognize those false prophets is by the fruit. Well, what's the fruit, Jesus? Well, the fruit is not their confession. It's not their activity. It's not their miracles. It's not their boasting. It's not even doing things in my name. It's only those who do what I've just outlined in the sermon.
Right.
Those are the ones you can trust. Because he says only those who do the will of my Father. Now, he's not talking about being perfect. Of course not. Because none of his followers were. And yet they became great shepherds of this movement.
Right.
Nor were they perfect after their elevation to shepherds, right? Because Peter and Paul have issues. So we're not talking about, does my life perfectly mirror the Sermon on the Mount? No, Jesus doesn't. No, Jesus is the only one who doesn't. Hello, heresy alert. But all we have, so here's Ravi Zacharias, right? And this I mean, worldwide movement and so many people. And then it just all comes falling apart. I mean, and to a lesser degree, I've been exposed like that, and others, right? And you just sit and you go, we have elevated the wrong people to all of our most important positions. Because here's the point: the stage is the most anti-Jesus part of the way we do church. Right? Because what is the stage if not the exercise of gifts, the importance of ministry, the perfection of confession, the displays of rhetorical skill and spectacular power, right? And so how easy to be lured in by the therapeutic promises of the life improvement coaches, the doctrinal purity of the people who relational practices alienate everyone around them, right? The righteous anger of the so-called prophets who don't have friends and are horrible neighbors, right? How easy. There was a tweet I saw this week from an older Reformed gentleman that I have respect for. It was a picture of a church. Let me see really quickly if I can find it. It was a picture of a church in the 50s, 40s, something like that. And it has a big announcement that Jesus saves, and then it's full of Ku Klux Klan members in robes. Okay? And the pastor from the pulpit is shaking the hands of what looks like to be the leader of the Ku Klux Klan while the audience is watching.
Right.
And so this pastor said, is this a faithful church? In doctrine, yes, but in culture, no. And the culture makes the doctrine bitterly distasteful to any honest person. This Christianity is anti-Christian. It started long ago and it's still around. I oppose all such Christianity. Now, I couldn't agree with that second bit more. But notice the difference between, is this a faithful church? Yes, in doctrine.
Right.
As if being pure in doctrine is separate from freaking being racist. Yeah. As long as we have the confession of Lord, baby, yeah, we made a mistake with culture. You're right. We shouldn't have been in the hoods, but we were right in our doctrine. I just want to say,
the doctrine that led you to the hoods.
Yes. No, Jesus so contradicts that here.
Yeah. So, all right, can I ask a question?
No, I'm pissed at all of it. Yeah, you can go ahead.
This section is very complicated. So, when you said that we've elevated the wrong people to position, is it that we've elevated the wrong people, or is it that
that's
are they
a
corrupted by the position? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, that is Timothy. You earned your paycheck this week, man. You're absolutely right. I think it's both.
Okay.
So because we value the kinds of people who fill the position, we've turned the position itself into a corrupting influence. But you're right. The dynamic has to be both.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody who stands on a stage and has a platform. And I've just learned the greatest threat to my soul is this work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because I'm so liable to substitute all of those things that can be false for the simple, small, sacrificial obedience of loving neighbor and loving enemy, of blessing and having integrity of speech, of not lusting, but instead conveying dignity and value, of not trusting in money, but trusting in the King. I mean, good Lord. And so it's like when Jesus teaches the rich people, it's not that rich people can't come into the kingdom. Right. They just have a set of problems that make it infinitely harder to come into the kingdom.
No, that's a good example.
And so for me, Paul and Peter, they taught, the apostles taught. There's a place for instruction. But the stage is also a metaphor for the kind of leadership that Jesus here says isn't good fruit. And so I just feel, so much of the inner work of the last year and a half for me has been, but even longer than that, has been like, holy crap, how do you not get warped by a professional opinion haver?
Yeah.
Or by standing in a stage as some sort of expert or teacher. Obviously, it can be done and has been done by many godly men and women. Obviously, it's an important part of the kingdom because teachers are listed as foundational leadership gifts of the church. And obviously, Paul and Peter and Priscilla and Aquila, and probably Phoebe. I mean, these were men and women who taught in the church and didn't do so from a place of shame, but from a place of calling. But they did it in a world that did not provide the celebrity-ness, the gravitational pull of celebrity into that. So I've been thinking a lot about, because anytime you get a Ravi Zacharias, you start thinking, or Jean Vignier. Was that his name for L'Arche? I don't know if that's how you say his name, but he was somebody who founded this community that Henry Nouwen went to, where people of great disability were cared for and nurtured and taken care of, and then you find out he had this whole double life, and as these things keep unraveling, we keep going, oh, how did we miss this? Or why didn't we see this?
Yeah.
And the answer, of course, is just that we've been seduced into the broad path. Our yearning for these kind of gifts is a broad path issue, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not denigrating those of us who are called and gifted and who want to teach. It's just the work we have to do, and the work a church has to do to keep itself healthy in the midst of that is so much harder than the broad path of Christianity, which in America, which has been great personality, big church, private double standards, but man, look at the results, so we'll live with them.
Yeah, I mean, so much of that, the broad road, the way that you talked about it, is so self-centered and self-serving, right? Most of it is like,
that's what being a wolf is. Yes.
And we've spent so much time, or you have over the last year talking about the difference between, like the performance nature of being on the stage and the divorcing of your public and private self, and because that's what it does, right? This whole thing segregates the way our model segregates within the church. I don't mean racially, although we've seen some of that as well, but I'm talking about just with like hierarchies. There's segregation, and these pastors have had like so many of them have these double lives because of the lack of community. It's so counter to everything we've been doing in the Sermon on the Mount. It's like you're pushed out of community, and because of that performance and that stature has built double identities. That's right. And when Jesus is just like, this is about living with people, living amongst people, being in each other's lives, and we've built integrated structures that are opposite of that. Yeah,
that's right.
Not segregated and separated, but integrated with one another. I think it's so interesting because we have like two audiences, I feel like, that listen to this podcast. We do have a lot of pastors, and we've had conversations about, like, I don't know, a couple episodes ago talking about how can we help support pastors who are scared to break from the mold or break from the tradition that has been built here, especially in America, to try to help not equip, because we hate that word, but
you love it,
and encourage or come alongside. But then there's like the other half of the audience is the people who are in the seats or used to be in the seats or whatever, and it's like the encouragement is the same, but it's different, and it's really interesting.
Yeah,
right. Because people
totally
being put in that position is tearing people apart that position of leadership or performance or whatever.
Yeah.
But that affects the congregation in a different way. I don't know. I'm rambling now, but I'm
No,
trying to
you are
process
not
all of this
rambling.
because it's really interesting. It's
Oh, it's
really
de-
difficult, but
It's
it's really
devastating.
interesting.
This
Yeah.
is devastating to the American Church Project.
Yeah.
And he doesn't stop there. Therefore, and here's the sum, right? Remember, he starts by saying he's come to fulfill the law. And that means to show how God intended it for it to be understood and practiced. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine, that right there is the blasphemy.
Right.
So he's just offered teaching, but now he's going to say that obedience to his words is what determines whether you've built your house on rock or sand when the day of the Lord comes upon us. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice, like a wise man who built his house on the rock. Now, this is standard Jewish rabbinical conceptions. The rain came down, streams rose, winds blew, beat against the house. It did not fall because its foundation was on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice. So guess who are the people who are most in danger after hearing this? The people who heard him and didn't believe it. It's like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Now, some think he could be making temple references here because the house built on the rock was a reference to the temple. And Jesus talks about the coming, a flood of judgment against the temple. So maybe he's saying this is true. Israel is no longer obedience to Moses, it's obedience to me. Dang. So, and John the Baptist previews this by saying, just because you're children of Abraham, don't think you're immune from the coming judgment. God can raise rocks to be children of Abraham, right? He doesn't need you. And so he's not talking about two different building locations. He's talking about two ways of laying a foundation to life. Right. One that listens and practices, and one that listens and doesn't. It's just ridiculous. And then it's no wonder that the reaction of the crowds is super important here. When Jesus had finished saying these things, all right, now that sentence is really important because that sentence or a version of it is used 5 times by Matthew to indicate the end of a big block of teaching. So you get later, like after Jesus had finished these parables or after Jesus had finished talking to the disciples, he does that 5 times. Now, why 5? What to the Jewish mind, what does 5 mean? Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses. Who is Jesus? Jesus went up on a mount. He offered words. He says, choose life or choose death, right? And then he compares himself to the rock. Come on. So this is Matthew's way of telling us this is a new Moses, a new Exodus, delivering us from a new Pharaoh into a new promised land. That's what he's doing, and it's utterly brilliant. Now, this leads to all sorts of wonderful implications. The first is the invitation of Jesus isn't salvation. The invitation of Jesus is following. That leads to life, but it's not life that's the goal. It's the following that's the goal. The life is the byproduct of the following. So when you hear this, and I love my Lutheran and Reformed brothers and sisters who say, the whole sermon is just based on telling us we can't do it by ourselves. This reminds us how much we need Jesus. And I'm like, no, that's not what Jesus himself said it was for. Jesus himself said we're to actually do this. That this is a way of life that, and Moses says the same thing to Israel in Deuteronomy. He's like, this isn't too high for you. This isn't up in the clouds somewhere, right? Meaning it's right here. You can do this.
Yeah.
Jesus almost has that same vibe with, dude, this is close. This is close. I mean, and when Jesus finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching because he taught as one who had authority and not as other teachers. Now you see why they thought, this is different. Because no other rabbi is going to say, hey, my words, if you live on these words of mine, right, the floods will come and you'll be fine. What from my understanding, teachers of the law back in those days would quote from other teachers of the law. The way you would talk about a passage is that Rabbi so-and-so said this, and Rabbi thus-and-so said this, and you would kind of move. Jesus isn't saying this. Jesus is saying, well, you've heard it said, but I tell you, right? And these words of mine, you must put into practice. I mean, it's like, hello? And to Jews, religious Jews who'd been taught that being a descendant of Abram, circumcised into Israel, and then being obedient to some of the more external stipulations of Torah was enough to be part of the covenant family. This was striking.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, this is an invitation to, nothing in here is about praying a prayer or going to heaven or avoiding hell. None of our standard formulations of Christianity have anything to do with this, right? Nothing. The message he preaches is repentance because the kingdom is at hand. So guess what? You are invited to align yourself with the coming of heaven to earth. That's it. That's the invitation. And you want to know what heaven on earth looks like? Look at me.
Right.
And pray. When you pray, God, may I be the kind of person who does on earth what your will is in heaven. Right? I mean, it's
yeah.
And notice there's nothing in there about changing the state.
Right.
Or throwing Bibles at people in the middle of rock concerts.
Right.
God bless them.
Because our mountain is Golgotha.
Come on, keep saying it. I love that. And this is where Dallas Willard comes in with
Willie.
Well, yeah. With what does it mean to be a disciple? That's like religious words that we hear that doesn't mean anything. Does that mean small groups? Nope. So let's just do some 101 stuff. All right. I'm channeling D. Willie, who totally made this real for me. To be a disciple is to be a student. It means that somebody can do something you can't do but want to. And so I wanted to play tennis. So I go to a tennis pro, and that tennis pro apprentices me in a tennis kind of life. Yeah. So that when I swing, I do to the tennis ball what he or she does to the tennis ball. Correct? Yes. And the expectation isn't that I'm sitting there studying tennis theory, but that I am engaging in habits and practices that shape my muscle memory so that when I'm in game situations, I've rehearsed those situations so many times on the practice and the practice court, right, that they become second nature. We even have a word for that. They're second nature.
Yep.
So we are disciples of people all the time. Hey, I want to cook, so I watch this YouTuber. That's discipleship. Hey, I really want to understand what's going on in me, so I go to a therapist, and so many people who've gone to therapists become therapists. Right? I mean, to be a disciple it's the most basic thing. I'm learning to do what someone else can do, but I cannot yet do.
Although we've made discipleship not being a student of Jesus, but being a student of the different talking heads who have purported to speak on behalf of Jesus.
Or we've made discipleship involvement in the church. So you go to this church class, and then you go to this small group, and then you are on this service team, right? Mm-hmm. So you can see why none of this has been successful.
Yeah.
It's all just built on the ethereal. Sand. Yeah, it really is. So, and I'm all for discipleship programs, but those have never worked for me. What's worked for me are the like AA groups. I was 6.5. Huh?
I said right.
the groups that there is a ruthless honesty and kindness leads to repentance, not some pre-planned curriculum. Authentic friendships have been transformative, blah, 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 blah.
It's community.
Yeah, always. We're broken in community. We're healed in community. End of story. So there's a simplicity to this thing. We are learning from, and this is Willard, dude, we're learning from Jesus how to live, how Jesus would live if he were us. So it's possible to be a podcaster in a Jesus-like way, to be a father or mother, a son or daughter, a school worker, a laundry folder, right? All of that is the arena of discipleship. See, I always taught discipleship was the providence of the church. Nope, providence of real life. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. How are we disciples? How is that not just different from trying? Well, a couple of things. Number one, the identities that we are working towards have already been inherited. They've already been given to us. So we're not working from shame, condemnation, or guilt. We're working as people who have and are part of a new family, and we're working that identity from a place of security. But secondly, and this is Willard, dude, Jesus is with us in the combination of his spirit, his words, and his community. So we apprentice ourselves together. We pay attention to his words. We learn, like, not in some crazy way, but we learn to partner with the Spirit. Because the Holy Spirit is just simply the Spirit of Jesus universalized, right? And so we have the elements of discipleship all around us. The arena of discipleship is real life. The elements of discipleship are community, word, and spirit. And part of community are formational practices, and part of spirit are spiritual disciplines, and part of word is understanding the Bible rightly and avoiding understanding it wrongly. So belief does matter. But we're with him because he is present where two or three are gathered, in the words of the Gospels, and certainly through his Spirit, as his Spirit inspired the apostles and now inspires us as communities. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the narrow way and the fruit he's looking for has nothing to do with the doctrinal purity of your beliefs. So it's possible to believe purely and not be Christian. And it's possible to not believe purely and be Christian, according to Jesus. There's a doozy.
Ay, ay, ay.
One more. Okay, two more implications.
He's really wrapping this whole thing up with some fireworks.
Oh, my Lord. For those of our audience who are in vocational church ministry, and you have a paycheck attached and a professional obligation to righteousness, and a motivation to righteousness, we are in the most dangerous of all positions, and drastic measures must be taken to ensure our health. I wish I had known and believed this sooner. Spend gobs of money on therapy and spiritual direction and retreats and help centers and your marriage. I mean, fight for those suckers as if that were the most important thing about you, because as actually it turns out it is. There has to be a place where you are ruthlessly honest. You have to have one. You just have to. You have to, with not just with the cool sin, but with the dumb, embarrassing sin. And by dumb, embarrassing sin, I mean like, this is what I put into the search bar. Right? I mean, it's not like, hey, I struggled last week and really nice and generous. Like, no, it's gotta be ruthless. And there's a difference, according to my therapist, between privacy and secrecy. Secrecy means no one knows, and that's death to us in vocational ministry, death to humans.
Yeah.
But privacy means the right people know.
Right.
That I have people who can intervene and have.
Yeah.
Out of
really
great
good.
love and friendship for me. You have to fight for this, because professional, vocational, religious church-going ministry is it's antithetical to the vision of life laid out in the Sermon on the Mount, because the vision of life is all about quiet and marginal and slow, and remember the word he used, hidden. Pray hidden, give hidden, right? And for those who want the spectacular and the crowds, that's our reward, right? You talk about sand, there it is.
Yeah.
And God, listen, God is so gracious. He lets all of us go through this. I mean, of course, I was taken with all of that and still have the potential to be. Of course, I loved, being a person of good reputation and, powerful speaking presence. Of course, I loved it and then benefit from it. Yeah. Right? Benefit financially, benefit reputational wise. Absolutely. And God still used and grew, but the place where he was relentless with me is that he would keep bringing me back to this mountain of unresolved shame and hurt that I was adding to and using competence to hide behind. He kept dragging me back there until I was finally willing to begin to deal with it. And it was only because of the intervention of folks who were full of grace and truth that sort of exorcism, in a manner of speaking, was welcomed and happened. Yeah. And so in the same time, Jesus is speaking words to us that we have to so carry with a great deal of weight. There is grace when we're just still screwing up. There's no doubt God used Mark Driscoll to do good in many people. There's no doubt God has used Mike Erre to do some stuff, even though Mike Erie's a clown. Right? There's no doubt Timothy John Stafford or Kevin Marshall or Bonnie Lewis or whoever, right, has been used greatly in the midst of our growing and learning. So hallelujah for that. Just the way we love and give our kids permission to grow and screw up, our Father does that with us, no doubt. But there comes to a place where we have to choose to resist the impulses of stage life. And that stage can be a group of kids in children's ministry. Yeah. That stage can be youth ministry. That stage can be anything where our professional motivations get intertwined with financial incentives to holiness. And the Sermon on the Mount indicts us most of all, right? It just does. And so our study through this has been so sobering for me because of this. I mean, I've never felt so invigorated and so flattened as I have these last months. Yeah. Like I can emotionally do 2 or 3 of these in a row and then I need to interview somebody. Yeah. Like I just need to step away because it's like so searching. And yet, how can I not look at this way of being in the world and just absolutely say, I want that? Yeah. I do. I want that. I want to be a force for good in the world. I need to go take a nap. Between WandaVision and this.
Oh, man. I wish so bad that I could somehow reach out through everybody's speakers and help them find like a community that they can do this in. Yeah. I wish that we can manifest that somehow, because I just that's what has been like every section of this whole sermon has just reinforced how much we need to be in community for life.
It's so true. And there's so many of us. I mean, we've experimented with micro communities. We're trying to find, it's just,
we haven't cracked it. And I don't know that we can. I don't know how to encourage everybody to find And I don't know if everybody can. I don't know if people are in places where they can find that. But man, like everything that you just said, everything that we've looked at has just been like, it's living life together. And those fruits of like, visiting the people in prison, all that comes out of that community mindset, and all comes out of the well of community. Being the center focus versus the boundary focus, like going back a year or two, like everything has fed to this idea that Jesus is just like, obviously he said it first. I'm not saying that Vox said it first, but just so much of just like be in each other's lives and have that place where how did you say it? Ruthlessly honest.
Yeah.
And that's such a physical word, like just tearing open, just ruthlessly exposed.
Ugh. Oh, who would choose it? No one would choose it. That's why it gets forced upon us. And then the only choice is to defend and pretend, or to admit and submit.
It's just some gross McDonald's version of community.
Yeah. Yeah. And for churches, I mean, we only knew what we knew, and what we knew was church growth theory, and
it's time to change.
Yeah, well, not just change, but repent, and
Yeah.
that repentance has to look like acknowledging the harm. It has to look like lament. It has to look like public confession. It has to look like the public, symbolic and otherwise, embracing of new dimensions of and facets and modalities of what ecclesia is and means and does and how it works. And so I love that in the middle of this whole sermon, I said yes to being a teaching pastor again. And it's been so interesting for this church in Tennessee that is filled with incredible people for this. See, it would feel so weird for me to be going through this and not wrestling in a community for it.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we have enough white podcasters who are middle-aged men. We've got plenty. But it was so important, and you and Kevin and Brenda and Bonnie, my therapist, my spiritual director, we were all shouting in unison that one of the most important parts for me and my being healthy was to find a place where I wasn't the centerpiece and I wasn't the head person, but where I could do what I love and what I'm gifted at. And so it's the same thing we've been saying the whole time. I have such great hope for this thing we call the church. I really do, because I've tasted it. I've tasted it at its best. I've tasted it at its worst. I've led it at its best, and I've led it at its worst. And so, I am so unbelievably indicted. I just get a chance to publicly repudiate things I thought and believed before, and to embrace shifts. And of course, my kids and our kids, they'll have to deal with the culture we've given them.
Yeah.
That's the ongoing work of every generation, is to keep the wine in Jesus's image, the old wine, the inherited faith, and then think and dream and pray about the new wineskins, how we love and serve the culture at large in categories it understands and prophetically needs.
Yeah, absolutely. The church that I grew up in has recently imploded, like the actual church that I grew up in. And they're all trying to figure out how to move forward or whatever. But when I was a kid in that church was completely community focused and community service focused. Yeah. I don't remember one Bible study or one like Sunday school story. Not one that was taught on a felt board and whatever. That had no impact on my life.
Yeah.
But the way that the adults loved and lived in each other's lives, and the way that the families lived together, and the way that they served mothers in the area and a couple other things, I remember all of that.
Right.
All of it.
Yes.
That
Yes.
is what resonated and taught me and gave me a somewhat of a foundational understanding of what it means to be doing all of this. And that's what I want my kids to see. All of the fallibility will come with it. All of the brokenness will come with it. But I want them to see us loving each other and living in each other's lives and being ruthlessly honest with, and that's okay. And that's healthy. It's healthy to be exposed. It's healthy to be, open with your brokenness and that kind of stuff. That's what I want my children to take with them into their adult lives and to give to their children. That's the lineage that I want to carry.
Yes, that's so well said. And we'll close with this, Timothy. Well said, man. You've added so much to this. I love it. The whole series, you've been really thoughtful and great. I'm going to close
growing and learning in real time.
I know, but that's what makes it so fun, is that you speak for, I hear that from so many of our listeners, that you give voice to things they're thinking and feeling, But let me just say this about WandaVision, and you'll see where I'm going. All right?
Oh, no.
WandaVision, the arc is the story of the stages of grief from deconstruction to reconstruction. And it is the most profound meditation on suffering and grieving that I've seen, I think, in a long, long time.
Whoa! All right.
And so I was watching it with my son, my wife, and just going, this translates. This is beautiful. It's so good, and it's just what we did. What we just did is that journey. So anyway, I will not say more except if you have Apple TV and have not watched it, there are Easter eggs that unless you're a Marvel fan, you will miss. There's parts you won't get. And even we've watched all the movies and there were still things we were missing. But, dude, I'm impressed. I'm just impressed.
I can't wait.
Yeah. Who knew comic books had something to say?
Yeah,
I did not.
I did.
So anyway, friends, good Lord, thank you for making it all the way through this. We really are grateful. Hope there's something good that you can take away from all this. As always, it's the end of the Sermon on the Mount.
That's the end.
What the hell are we doing next week?
I don't know. That was a marathon.
I know. I need you to have an epic title for this one.
Whew.
I want you to start thinking now. It needs to be epic. Because this was epic. Or at least it felt epic. Like these words of Jesus. Like it wasn't just like, and they lived happily ever after epic. This was like,
I'm going to find a good Striper song title to use.
Oh, Soldiers Under Command. Yellow and Black Attack.
There it is.
Somewhere in my scattered subconscious are Striper lyrics, I'm sure.
Oh, man.
Oh, well, ladies and gentlemen, in honor of our band Striper, we will simply close by saying, to hell with the devil. Until next time, friends.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. The Vox Podcast is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is supported by listeners like yourself. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Vox Podcast. You can also engage with the hosts on social media at facebook.com/Vox Podcast, on Instagram at Vox Podcast, and on Twitter at Mike Erre. Thank you for walking this road with us.